I love it. We just got the hotel lobby staff come over and they've asked us when our breaks are because we've completely taken over the lobby of the hotel. So well done, everyone. That's fantastic. So we've got, obviously, this session, which is a couple of keynotes, a couple of panels. And then in the afternoon, really looking forward to the afternoon session, we have TVNZ, who'll be presenting for the first time in 4 to 5 years or so since you guys have been here. Karen Nelson-Field will be on, talking about some of the amplified stuff. We have Radha from CBS Paramount. She's in the room as well. There she is. She's flown in from New York today. So you're going to learn all about the currency stuff. And then actually, I'll have to give Paul McIntyre a bit of credit for this. We came up with this sort of trifecta, if you like, to complete the event, which is listening from agency CEOs, the CMOs, then having the screen maestros respond to all their commentary, which should be a fantastic conclusion. And I have been asked, is there beer at the end? Yes, there's booze. We've ordered plenty of booze, so do stay around and do join me for a drink. Right, first presentation this session, and I'm absolutely honoured to have this fella here. He's travelled, again, someone else has travelled all the way from New York. Gavin is the Senior Media Analyst and SVP for Variety, and he's been covering the rapid changes, if you like, in TV for many years. He's a top speaker from around the world, and we're absolutely delighted and really lucky to have him here. He's going to enlighten us about how to make money fast. Everyone, let's give a massive round of applause for Gavin Bridge.
Thank you very much. Well, hello, everyone. Yes, I'm not as American as you'd think from coming from New York, but I'm delighted to be here today to talk about what FAST is about and really why it's something that we should be considering, I think, in Australia, based on what we've seen in the US. I mean, I've been covering FAST since 2019 for Variety when I first started to write the first report, so I've been following it ever since it just began to grow and has become what it has, really a global phenomenon these days. So, topic today, how to make money in FAST. First of all, I mean, who knows what FAST is? And that's a good reason why I'm here. So for those who don't know, it was mentioned in the last panel as well, it's free ad-supported streaming TV. So the key difference between that is that it's live streaming channels, right? You've got two types of free streaming. There's AVOD, which is on demand, and you've got live streaming channels. FAST as a term only came about in like 2019 as well. I think before they were just called like streaming channels in the US or linear streaming channels, but we needed a snappy acronym, and FAST is where it's got. So today we're going to talk about three different things. First, the foundations of FAST. Second, really what's happening in America and sort of lessons we can learn. And third, sort of why the market in Australia is quite perfect for FAST. So Life in the Fast Lane is the series of reports that I frequently author for Variety. They're normally free, which is actually good. The section of Variety I work for is not free, but they're normally sponsored. So after this, if you really want a detailed dive, just Google like Variety Life in the Fast Lane, and I'm not making this up. Most CEOs who are involved in FAST will tell you it's the best thing out there on FAST. It's even on syllabuses in like colleges now. So good stuff. But there's four real things about FAST that are like key to think about. It's a great way to monetize old content, right? So it's really found money in the US. It's been proven to do that. It's a way of reaching new audiences, both in terms of people who have cut the cord and also, like was alluded to in the last panel, it's a way of, if you have FAST in a system, it's a way of keeping audiences in and having them watch content for longer. It helps to innovate and evolve TV. Now, my friend Beth Anderson, who is the GM of FAST, her title's just changed, but GM of FAST at BBC Studios has said that FAST is the grandchild of traditional television. It's still TV, it's just using the digital age to innovate and create new formats and really stuff that viewers enjoy. And finally, it helps to democratize content. So by that, I mean, if you think of traditional TV, it was very expensive to create a TV channel, right? You had to have broad appeal. It had to, make enough money to cover the costs. FAST has much lower costs to create channels. What that means is you can have channels that are based upon any niche genre. So I always fall back on the fact that in the US, there's 16 adventure sports channels on FAST. You might get a slot on ESPN2 for a Saturday afternoon, but you can, if you're into that content, you can actually find not just one channel, but channels geared around it. So you can serve any audience within FAST, which is really a lovely thing about it. So there are three main pillars that create FAST. You need content, you need distribution, and you need to have, well, and advertising is how it is monetized. And there's two different types of fast models. There's no difference between the two from a consumer perspective. Not one at the moment has an advantage over the other, but you have dedicated fast platforms that are built into TV sets, like Samsung TV Plus, or you have fast channels that are working within an app, so 7 Plus being a great example domestically, like Pluto TV, Freevee in the US, for instance. And it's important to note, too, that the majority of viewing for fast comes from CTV. There is some mobile, but like whenever I speak with the different companies in the US, they really just say it's all TV-based. In terms of why you should think about fast, it's an additional way to maximize your monetization. So you don't have to do fast, but then you won't make as much money as you could. So you can see here in the Australian market, it sits alongside BVOD in terms of live TV, and then as a derivative of over-the-top and CTV. And then there's like AVOD, SAVOD, which I joke, I got away in an article once calling it ASVOD. So I think it makes more sense, ad-supported subscription VOD, rather than, but that was only allowed once. And SVOD. So it's part of the environment. It's just something that I think that going forwards is, if you don't do it, you're leaving money on the table. So in terms of what you can find on FAST, a beauty of what we can see in Australia is the fact that FAST is constantly evolving, right? So if you look here, these are the generations of FAST channels as they fell out in the United States. So starting in 2014, when Pluto and Zumo first started linear channels, it was traditionally short-form video clips from like magazine brands that had YouTube channels and stuff, and they'd been stitched together. And there were a couple of curated channels, but for the most part, they were these like brands that you'd heard of, and they were creating channels out of them. Then there was a second generation of content, which was some media brands getting involved, mainly news and sports. The news at the time was not live, and I can share the great anecdote of, I watched NBC News Now the day after Notre Dame burnt down, and it said, breaking news, Notre Dame is burning down. And I was like, oh, shit, again? That was literally, and then I realized it was a clip. And they moved from that model to live news now, so you don't get these accidental doomsday things happening a day after. Sports is still a little interesting in the US. The big sports brands tend to recycle the content more, but that's kind of changing, and we can jump ahead to generation 4 on that. The third generation of FAST was really when we started to see big media brands get involved. So it really was triggered by when Pluto was bought by Viacom in 2019, and they put all of these, both single series IP, so like The Challenge, MTV The Challenge is one channel that springs to mind, and a bunch of the Viacom networks. That then saw more services, more viewers come in because it legitimized FAST. Previously, when it was like Generation 1, it looked like a bizarro world version of TV, to be honest. It was just like someone had created a budget version of television without any of the brands. And so you got more viewers because it became legitimized. That led to more advertisers. That led to more channels. That led to more viewers. So we're at about 63 or 67 channels that are branded with at least one big media brand. So by that I mean, like, so MTV could have 7 channels, but they count as one media brand in that. So you've got like 63 distinctive media properties with at least one FAST channel in the US now, which has fueled the ascent of FAST. Then we're at Generation 4, originals on FAST, live TV on FAST. And the reason I say this is because Australia doesn't have to go through the evolutions, right? You don't have to become, you don't have to be a caveman and then become a man. You can just straight up walk into Generation 4 and use the innovations that have been there, which is a great position to be in. In terms of what is driving FAST, like why in a world where we were told linear TV is dead, no one cares about linear TV, how is linear streaming growing? Key to that is paralyzed or decision paralysis, the paradox of choice, right? Like you think you go onto a VOD, whether it's AVOD or SVOD or ASVOD, you have to go through the title. I mean, it's different if it's a movie, but if you've got to find a title for a TV show, then you have to select a particular episode. There's a lot of choice. Research has been done that shows that you'll spend around 100 days of your life deciding what to watch. And the reason this is important is FAST, it's a nostalgia in a way. We all grew up watching regular television with a channel guide. We're used to that for our decisions. To see a channel guide full of brands that are just on, the decision's been made for you, it's already been programmed, it's one of the real reasons why lean-back television, which was, de jure in like 2020 in the States, you couldn't move without someone saying lean back. That is why FAST has done very well. So in terms of the age of FAST in the US, like why is FAST booming? First of all, we're seeing, we all know that linear TV viewing is falling a little bit, and so there's been a pullback from ad spend. So we see like $60 billion less being spent on television advertising in 2023 than in 2016. FAST, therefore, is an opportunity for some TV operators to cover some of these losses. And that is one of the reasons why, especially in the US, you find most of the media companies now have a FAST service. ABC, Disney doesn't yet, but they have FAST channels on their CTV app, but no one really knows about them. Fox has Tubi, Paramount has Pluto, NBC Universal / Comcast kind of has Peacock. Peacock still has free channels, but you can't get to them anymore from an outside perspective, only if you had already signed up. But they also have a joint venture with another TV provider, Charter, and have a service called Xumo. And then there's like Roku's. We'll get into that in a little bit. But just to say, most of the TV companies have already embraced FAST to some degree as a way to at least get some of the ad dollars back that were being spent on their linear channels in the past. So US, not just in FAST, the US is a monster of many things, right? Like you can see here, it's just like, it's predicted by Omdia by 2027 to be worth $10 billion in advertising, which is tremendously more than any other country on this list. What is very nice to see on this list is Australia is predicted to be the 4th biggest market for FAST by 2027. So another reason why, unless you want me to look like a fool, you should join into FAST, because otherwise it's going to become a false prophecy. But it's supposed to become a very big market. So it's just a way to make money, right? You're going to hear that a lot, people making money fast, but I want to hammer that home. In terms of how FAST is growing, so we've got the most recent reported global figures from Tubi and Pluto. Tubi only has FAST in the US, it has AVOD everywhere else. Pluto has FAST and AVOD in all the territories it's in. It's about 20, I think. It's all of Latin America, North America, UK, most of Europe as well. That's about it for Pluto. And they have 78 million. When they were bought, they had 12 million users. And they make, on average, $1.38 per month from every global subscriber. Obviously, that figure is going to be higher in the US, but they don't break that out for us. In terms of the number of channels, now we've seen a tremendous growth. And I really regret, in a way, measuring these. Because when I started measuring the channels in 2019, there were 5 services. And between them, they had like not even 500 channels back then. Now there's like 14, 16 major services, and there's over 1,600 distinctive channels. So if you were to actually start your own FAST service in the US, you could pick from 1,628 different channels to put on there. So it's a tremendous growth. What's fueling that growth is obviously audience demand. People aren't just going to pour money in if they're not making any return on it. Like different networks have told me they have made 7 figures a year just from one channel. So a good little stat to have. In terms of where Australia sits, it is newer to FAST. It's got 389 channels at the moment, behind the UK, behind Canada. I actually found it interesting. Canada has more than the UK, but less population. So that was an interesting finding. 389 isn't bad. That's roughly where we would have been at about 4 years ago in the US. And it will only, there's announcements yesterday that it's growing. So we're just going to keep seeing that figure grow in this country. In terms of who operates FAST, I said some of these companies earlier, there's 3 different types of owners in the US. You've got tech OEM companies, so Plex, Roku, Samsung, Vizio, LG, Amazon with Freevee. You've got TV services, so pay TV like Comcast and Dish owns Sling, and just different broadcasters. So not only do you have like the bigger ones I mentioned before, but people like Univision has a Spanish specialty service in ViX. Sinclair, which owns local channels, has Stir. So you see like this big spread, and that leads to this like tremendous system that we have there. Who's watching? Well, it's not Gen Z. Whenever you go to a conference in the US, they'll say, FAST is so young. That's because the average TV age in the US is like 75 or something crazy like that. When they say FAST is young, they mean me. and I'm 40 next year. So like, I like being called young, but I'm not young. It's prime for advertisers, right? Like, and you'll see why on the next slide, because a lot of the content that's available on FAST is stuff that appeals to millennials. And there is stuff that appeals to the older generations too, but there's these big TV shows now. You've got like The Office has a channel on Peacock. Jeopardy, which is a big cultural favorite there across ages. Blue Bloods, The Walking Dead, Law and Order, which everyone still seems to watch. Jersey Shore, just these big brands that can draw people in, and to the point made in the last panel, really are a strong driver for FAST and single IP channels in a lot of the time. We're seeing the amount of time spent watching FAST increase per month. So it's gone up 89% on average among viewers in the last year. And in terms of like what we see, it's mostly general entertainment is my code for TV. But there's some other stuff in there as well. So you might have like relaxing, slow TV, which isn't really a TV channel, or a TV show, but it's still formatted for TV. They're the majority. In Australia, we see like 61%. Then there's channels based on movies. There's music, so live music, videos or audio channels. News is very big in the US. Local news has like over 200 channels alone. Then you have like national news, international news, weather channels. Opinion I kept separate from news because I think like something like Newsmax probably would masquerade as news, but it's not really news. So there's a very, like 9 channels, I think, in the US that are opinion-based. And then there's sports. Sports isn't quite what you'd think of it as being, although there are leagues now with channels, but it's not like, you can't watch like ESPN on FAST yet. So in terms of what FAST holds for Australia, the market's primed for watching FAST, right? Smart TV adoption's growing. Most people who have a smart TV stream on it. Who are these 1 in 10 who don't? A third of Australians are streaming daily. So it's perfect really for content, especially when you start putting like live news on there and stuff like that, that people will adopt and fall back to this. We also see from Samsung's data that streaming is surging. So they found that 67% of hours watched on their TV sets are coming from streaming, and 33% is going into free streaming. So again, it shows that the market's ready for it, and free streaming is the highest growing format in this country at the moment. So it's again, like if you're not in FAST, not just as an operator, but a content provider, you can have your channels there. It's also worth noting that like FAST in here has channels from the UK, channels from Canada. You can, if you're a content owner, you could actually create a channel and probably export that to other regions too. Jack Hanna's the best example I can think of as an Australian show that's already in the US, but it works both ways. Content can travel within FAST, and everyone wants content at this point, like high quality content. So it's just a hint. So we're seeing growth, but just like we see in the US, the consumer growth is not matched necessarily by the spend that's happening. Spend is kind of falling behind. We found that people, I was told anecdotally in Q4 in the US, when Netflix and Disney started their ad-supported services, some agencies pulled back the spend on FAST and put it into the ASVODs, and they assume that everyone's the same, and the viewers are not, right? So there's like a lack of education in the US, and I think we'll see this change over time. In terms of domestically, it's a great market here. Versus UK, versus Canada, which each have 1 domestic FAST service, you've got 3 of the major ones here that are domestically owned, which is a perfect, well, it's just unique. And I think it's great because it shows that the Australian companies, media companies here, are actually paying close attention to the trends that are happening, which you don't find in all the other countries. So that's a good job, Australia. I mean, I don't know if that sounds patronizing. It's really cool. I like FAST. I want FAST to succeed, so I'm happy to see it. In terms of distribution, most of it's general entertainment, and there's like an even split between movies, music, and sport. And then we have single IP. And Baywatch was mentioned earlier. It's a great example, but what's interesting is, there's already 28 single IP shows in channels in Australia, but a lot of them are domestic. So you go to other countries, it tends to be the US imports, like Baywatch, which still works. But the fact that I think it's 7+ has at least 12 single series channels when I looked at it, based on shows, many of which came out maybe only like 10, 15 years ago. It's a pretty good sign. It's a very good market, a good sign of the market and a good sign of paying attention to what works. So in terms of sum this up, if you want to come away from this record landslide of fast here. It helps you, if you're considering either spending on it or creating channels for it, it helps you reach a new audience, and it helps to remonetize the content that you have, which is perfect. It democratizes content, has a lower barrier to entry, both for a consumer and for a channel creator. And there's a focus on fast for like what we call an addressable TV-like experience. So the advertising is very good. The way that you can like go through the EPG as a consumer is a very friendly experience. So with that, we're going to have a quick fireside chat. I'd like to welcome Alex Spurzem, who's the General Manager of Samsung Ads Australia, and we're going to have a quick talk about other aspects of fast.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Gavin. That was great, insightful, to say the least. We have a couple of minutes to chat. You've very well shown that fast is still in its infancy in Australia, but also lots of room to grow. I want to start with usage. We did some research very recently because we were curious to understand how consumers were engaging with fast service in this country. And is this not working? Is this better? Yeah, okay, there we go. Usage is what we wanted to talk about. So we did a survey very recently, and one of many things we found was almost 80% of consumers are looking to their electronic programming guide or the home screen of the TV to discover content. How does that compare to what you're seeing in other markets?
Well, it's actually very interesting because in the US, if you look at most smart TVs, there's that little bar at the bottom, right, when there's a sponsored thing for services. A lot of the time now I see ads for Tubi, for Freevee, for Pluto on there, but also not just the services, but actual channels. So you're finding companies advertising channels to kind of use the CTV as the entry point to get into fast, which I think is a really you've never really found, you couldn't sponsor a channel on a traditional TV guide, right? Like it's not you log in and you could go, oh, ESPN is telling me to watch this. So it's as an entry point, the homepage is helping to do that. But also don't forget, like for OEMs, you've got the remotes with the hot button on it. And that's also become a very interesting way that, at home you have like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and then I have Samsung's, believe it or not, so I have Samsung button there as well, and it's a really good way to actually encourage people to get into the service.
You talked earlier about the different distribution models being fast in an app or dedicated fast platforms. Can you talk for a minute about what the differences are and what that means for content owners?
I mean, really, it just means that you've got, so a TV set could have a built-in program guide, right, which is a very nice navigation tool for a consumer. Within an app, it's a way to really monetize or keep people in for longer. So you'll have SVOD sometimes or AVOD and then fast kind of living all under the same ecosystem. So it's more just like a difference in terms of how you navigate, I think.
Cool. So let's shift gears a little bit. At this point, it's no secret anymore. Samsung has got a horse in the fast race. It's called Samsung TV Plus. I looked up some stats earlier. It's available in 24 countries now, reaches 500 million devices, streamed more than 3 billion hours of content last year. My point being, these are increasingly large numbers. However, I also remember when we started here about 2 years ago with 20-odd channels, this concept of fast, the idea of free streaming content, that wasn't immediately opening doors back then. My question to you is, how quickly did that conversation change in the States, and what was it that brought more viewers into fast and solidified it as a viewing channels?
Well, it took about 6 years in America, so I don't think it's going to happen here. But there was I was actually having a conversation last year at MIPCOM with the head of Zumo, and he was saying they used to just beg people for content, and now they're having to turn people away because everyone has realized what fast can offer, and now everyone wants their content there. And you're actually seeing that with channels too, in the sense that a lot of the services in the US in the last couple of months have started to cull channels they've never really done en masse before. So they're beginning to be very picky about what content they can put on because they're being offered so much content. The key was that positive feedback loop I mentioned earlier. Once the big brands got involved and it fed more viewers in, that was really what drove that that change in perception.
Picking up on content for a second, you also referenced news as well as single IP channels as two of the possibly larger opportunities. Interestingly, from our point of view, up until very recently, Mythbusters was our #1 channel until we launched Sky News Now, dedicated fast channel with Sky News. With the single IP channels, why do you think they do so well, and what are some of the considerations when working with those?
I think it's great because if you're fatigued and you're just trying to find something to watch, and you see a show that you liked, especially if they're procedurals, whether it's unscripted or scripted, you know you can just get into that and it's going to serve your need, right? So I do it all the time with Unsolved Mysteries, which is, I remember watching that when I was younger in England. I don't even know how that was on there, but I used to watch it. Nowadays, if I can't find something to watch, I will put that channel on my TV, regardless of like what else is on, because it gives you that sort of good feeling. It's just it's the feeling of nostalgia, but also you know you're going to be entertained. So it's really that, but also it's a great way of quantifying and legitimizing it in the eyes of a consumer. Because if you're going through and you're like, I know that show, it helps you realize it's a good quality proposition, but equally, it's great for content providers because because of the low costs, instead of just having like your old channel, right, which would have a mixture of shows on it, you can literally, for all of your big IP grabbing magnet sort of shows, you can have channels geared around that, which is just, it's the new syndication model is really how I'd put it.
Amazing. Someone I know famously made a nice analogy about the fast model. If you don't mind me picking up on your quote here, I suppose advertising is where the rubber hits the road, helps fund content investment, that brings more audiences, brings more ads investment. My question is, if that's a great flywheel, in your opinion, what, if anything, is holding back ads dollars in fast?
I think it's really a case of understanding what fast can offer. And it's not the only format. I've seen this happen in the US, for instance. Diginet's there, the sub-digital terrestrial channels. Many people there didn't use them in the ad agencies, so they struggle to understand how to sell against them. And I think with fast as well, it's become quite difficult, especially there's no unified data source in the US, for instance, right? So people aren't using it. It's a bit more complicated at times. It's just a question of education to me. So it's more just like working with the agencies to get them to understand it. And it's something that the TV providers are finding too, right? Because they're trying to sell on fast, and sometimes they can't fill it. Even with CTV in general, I think it's still part of that learning curve that we have to go through.
Great. We're at time, I'm afraid. Gavin, thank you so much for your perspective, for your insights. We really appreciate it. If you would like more of the same, please feel free to scan the QR code and connect. We'll make sure you get a copy of our upcoming Samsung Fast report. Please feel free to hit up Gavin on LinkedIn. He allowed me before the session to say that.
Yeah.
Flood your inbox.
Yeah, definitely do it. I'm happy to answer questions if you got any.
And with that, it's a wrap, and have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you.